Turkish involvement in the agreement is actually a price that Israel had to pay.
Had to pay. Otherwise, unfortunately, in retrospect, we can say that Hamas would not give us our hostages back. And of course, we can analyze it in a different direction as well. When we are looking at the Israeli airstrike in Qatar, also the Qataris understood that the hostages are becoming a burden for Qataris, and they understood that they have to get rid of this hostage thing, because it also began to damage also their image and their also sovereignty. So when we are looking at Hamas's maneuverability at that time, other than the Gaza Strip, in which territories Hamas could easily maneuver, in Qatar and in Turkey. It means that, yes, you persuaded Qatar with this airstrike that they had to give our hostages back. But Turkey could only be persuaded only when it was granted a very important status here as a key country, as a kind of a guarantor state in this equation. Other than this option, Turkey would not collaborate with you. And therefore, we can definitely say, once Qatar and Turkey are telling Hamas that you have no ability to maneuver anymore and you have to give these hostages back, and we're gonna defend your interests on the table, so the Hamas had no choice but to obey. And therefore, from the Israeli perspective, if you really want to get your hostages back, you had no other choice to put Turkey into the equation. But once we got our hostages back, now everything changed again. We all saw that many times Hamas violated the ceasefire, and many times the Israeli Defense Forces had to conduct airstrikes against Hamas terrorists who were present in the field, of course, for Israel's national security, as we do in Lebanon. Our military is conducting precise surgical airstrikes in order to get rid of these terrorist elements. And therefore, it's a huge question mark. If we're going to proceed to the second phase of the agreement, it means that, are we going to see the Turkish boots on the ground? Let me tell you, we are not going to see Turkish boots on the ground.
Hello and welcome to our podcast, East to West, and today we're talking about Turkey and the new developments in the Middle East with the strategic expansion, if we can call it, for the Turkish state. And to talk about that, we have Dr. Eytan Cohen with us. You are an expert in Turkey in Moshe Dayan Center, Tel Aviv University. Hello.
Thank you very much for having me.
From what you understand, let's maybe start with something general. Do you think that Israel should be afraid of Turkey?
That's a great question. Well, after October the 7th, I think Israel should be cautious, if not afraid, of every actor in the region. The October the 7th created a tectonic change in the Middle East, and it made fundamental changes also in the Israeli security doctrine. And I think the most important lesson that was learned in October the 7th, that Israel should treat every kind of player in the region with seriousness. It means that we do not have any luxury to say, no, this player will not evolve into a threat, or this entity is not creating a threat against the state of Israel. Not anymore. After October the 7th, the most important lesson that we should first be very much cautious, be very much aware of all of the developments in the region. And we should not underestimate any actor in the region, even if we have, we had a proper past like Turkey. Israel and Turkey never fought against each other. These two countries never declared hostilities against each other.
But the other signs from Ankara regarding becoming a threat or increasingly a threat to Israel?
Unfortunately, yes. Especially after the October the 7th, I think this is a very a turning point in the relations. Ankara began to adopt a very hostile stance against the state of Israel. And beginning with October, we can say, beginning with October and November 2023, we began to see that the Turkish administration began to adopt a very pro-Hamas stance vis-a-vis Israel. Look, I must put it on the table. We knew that Turkey had a pro-Palestinian foreign policy. We knew it. But the fact that this pro-Palestinian foreign policy was upgraded into a pro-Hamas foreign policy, yes, this is a new thing for Israel, and it is very hard to digest it for Israel.
The question is why. I mean, even Qatar, at some level, at least publicly, did not or wanted to get a bit more far from Hamas, specifically after October 7th. And on the other hand, we're seeing Erdogan speaking to the whole world that Hamas are resistant fighters and all of the things that Israelis don't want to hear. Why is that?
Mr. Erdogan is nowadays focusing on his legacy. And his legacy, I mean, he would like to be remembered as the Turkish leader who is trying to merge, who is trying to unite all of the Muslim world. And from his perspective, the Palestinian cause is constituting a very important factor here. And once you are playing this Palestinian cause also for your domestic politics, for your domestic politics interests, it is also strengthening you in Turkey. But I would like to mention that it is also strengthening Turkey's, foreign status as a Muslim country. Today, when we are looking at the Turkish foreign policy, we can definitely say that it's a neo-Ottoman foreign policy. And when we are digging and analyzing this concept, neo-Ottoman, what are we trying to talk about? If we're going to define neo-Ottomanism, we can definitely say that today's Turkey's administration is trying to revive the Ottoman influence, the Turkish influence in the same territories once upon a time Ottoman Empire ruled. And
you're saying influence and not territorial gain.
Well,
is this intentional?
Look, you made a very good point, because when we are looking in Iraq and when we are looking at Syria, we definitely see that here there is a territorial gain. Turkey is currently occupying northern Syria. Turkey is currently occupying northern Iraq. And they also intervened in western Libya. I only would like to remind to our audience that Ottoman Empire, before the creation of the Turkish nation state, they did control Libya until the 1911-1912 war of Tripoli with Italy. And therefore, from the Turkish perspective, the very existence of the Turkish forces or Turkish subcontractors or, and any other Turkish officials on Libya, consultants, and also in Syria and also in Iraq, from their perspective, they are acting in the lens of their forefathers. And therefore, we can definitely say that, yes, they would like to increase their influence, and in some cases they are merging their hard power with their soft power. Yes, it's a known fact that Turkey is becoming more and more active, and recently with the fall of the Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad, Turkey increased its influence and deepened its penetration.
We will talk about Syria in more depth in a minute, but I would like us to just a little bit more talk about Hamas, about the relationship between Turkey and Hamas. Are they actually allowing them to transfer funds? Are they allowing them? How does that work actually? Because it's hard to imagine that after October 7th, Israel still is allowing such a thing from happening, and also the Americans that are in a very good relationship with the Turkish state, and definitely Trump and Erdogan themselves are still aware of this and letting it happen?
Well, that's a great question. Recently, according to Israeli news sources and also according to the Israeli IDF spokesperson, recently the Israeli Shin Bet, the Israeli intelligence service, revealed a new money laundering network that it is operating in Turkey. Of course, they are collaborating with Iran. The Iranian money is coming to the Hamas cells in Turkey, this money laundering cell. And by making this money changes, from different currencies, they unfortunately whitewashed all of these transactions, and they transferred money to Hamas. What we understand from it is that Turkey is turning a blind eye and facilitating Hamas's activities inside Turkey. Today, we all know that Turkey is not tagging Hamas as a terrorist organization, but rather as a freedom fighter organization, and this is very unfortunate. And in this regard, Israel is revealing this network, and it's also warning all of the parties who are involved in this money laundering issues and transferring financial aid to Hamas is a red line.
With all what we have heard from Erdogan in the past 2 years, and definitely what you are describing here, one could imagine that Israel wouldn't allow Turkey in any close to Gaza or Hamas. But on the other hand, they have let them be one of the major mediators in this deal to ending the war. I don't know if we can call it ending the war, but the ceasefire agreement in October. Why is that?
Unfortunately, everything is not, very fair in the Middle East. Once you have your hostages in this terrorists' hands, you do everything possible to set them free. And of course, in retrospect, we can analyze the Israeli decision of paving the way of Turkey into Gaza's the day after, as we say in Hebrew, right? Of course, we can rationalize this decision by looking at the most important factors on the table: the hostages, the alive hostages. Of course, unfortunately, we still have one hostage left. Unfortunately, a victim of Hamas terrorism still in Hamas.
So what you're saying is Turkish involvement in the agreement is actually a price that Israel had to pay. Otherwise, unfortunately, in retrospect, we can say that Hamas would not give us our hostages back. And of course, we can analyze it in a different direction as well. When we are looking at the Israeli airstrike in Qatar, also the Qataris understood that the hostages are becoming a burden for Qataris, and they understood that they have to get rid of this hostage thing, because it also began to damage also their image and their also sovereignty. So when we are looking at Hamas's maneuverability at that time, other than the Gaza Strip, in which territories Hamas could easily maneuver? In Qatar and in Turkey. It means that, yes, you persuaded Qatar with this airstrike that they had to give our hostages back. But Turkey could only be persuaded only when it was granted a very important status here as a key country, as a kind of a guarantor state in this equation. Other than this option, Turkey would not collaborate with you. And therefore, we can definitely say, once Qatar and Turkey are telling Hamas that you have no ability to maneuver anymore and you have to give these hostages back, and we're gonna defend your interests on the table, so the Hamas had no choice but to obey. And therefore, from the Israeli perspective, if you really want to get your hostages back, you had no other choice to put Turkey into the equation. But once we got our hostages back, now everything changed again. We all saw that many times Hamas violated the ceasefire, and many times the Israeli Defense Forces had to conduct airstrikes against Hamas terrorists
who were present in the field, of course, for Israel's national security, as we do in Lebanon. Our military is conducting precise surgical airstrikes in order to get rid of these terrorist elements.
Yes.
And let me just conclude.
Yes.
And therefore, it's a huge question mark. If we're going to proceed to the second phase of the agreement, it means that are we going to see the Turkish boots on the ground? Let me tell you, we are not going to see Turkish boots on the ground.
That's exactly what I wanted to ask you, because the Turks are not stopping with their mediation between Israel and Hamas and their relationship with Hamas. They want also boots on the ground, as you're mentioning, in Gaza. Why is that? Let's start with why.
Because they want to be turned and tagged as a key country in the Middle East. From their perspective, all of this arena, Syria, Iraq, Jordan, Israel, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, all of the proper Middle East that we are talking about was once upon a time under Turkish sovereignty. And from their perspective, they are not like outsiders like Russia or the United States. They rely on their history. And they are saying that we were the true owners of this land, and therefore we have, as a very strong country in the region, as a regional power, and as a country on the paper who has friendly relations with Israel, which never declared official hostilities against Jerusalem, we are capable of doing it. Okay, this is a Turkish thesis, whether you believe it or not, because at the end, today we are seeing a very hostile Turkey against the state of Israel. Turkey is taking part in South Africa's judicial struggle against the state of Israel in ICJ. Turkey is conducting delegitimacy on daily basis against the state of Israel on every platform. They halted trade. They cannot be tagged as a constructive actor, definitely. And yes, we do understand that Turkey would like to play a role here, but the Turkish decision makers also should understand that unless they will change their attitude towards the state of Israel, which means that their antagonist foreign policy is not contributing for their role in the future, because of this antagonist foreign policy, no Israeli government is eager to pave Turkey's role into the Gaza Strip. I would like to give you a very concrete example. Recently, the Istanbul court, they just published a new arrest warrant against the Israeli Prime Minister, Israeli Defense Minister, the Chief of Staff, and other senior Israeli figures. Which Israeli government would cooperate with such Turkey? I mean, come on, it's almost impossible to cooperate with such a country.
Well, some Palestinian experts are saying that actually only Turkey can be there because of their relationship with Hamas, and they are the only ones that can disarm Hamas.
From the very beginning, I really wanted to believe that Hamas could be disarmed by an agreement. But
voluntarily.
Yeah, voluntarily. I mean, it's like, no, it's impossible. I mean, if you know the Palestinian cause and if you know about Hamas, you know that it can only be done through military means, and they are not going to do that voluntarily. I'm not buying it. And even if Turks will come, I don't think that they will be allowed to come. But let's imagine if they will come. Sincerely, I do not believe that the Turkish army will do its best in order to disarm Hamas. No, they are not going to do that. I mean, we are not naive. We are in the Middle East. And I also would like to mention here another important issue about this status of guarantorship. From a Turkish perspective, when a Turk is talking about a guaranteeship, what he or she understands from it. And here I would like to divert your attention to the Turkish history, to the Cypriot question. I will make it very short, but I need to provide you a very short historical background. In 1959, when Republic of Cyprus was born, Turkey, Greece, and Britain, they were conferred as the guarantor powers. And in 1960, these three states, they signed an agreement. They acquired the status of being a guarantor state. And in 1974, thanks to this guaranteeship agreement, Turkey regarded at the military coup that took place in 1974 in Cyprus as a violation of the status quo, and they used this status of being the guarantor state in the agreement, and they launched their intervention, their occupation of northern Cyprus. So when we are copying and pasting the Cypriot question and Turkish behavior in Cyprus to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, I understand here that the Turkish side is declaring from now that in case of a future violation, they would intervene militarily against the state of Israel in favor of the Palestinians. And while they are making this offer of acting as a guarantor state, they are saying we will act as a guarantor for the Palestinians, and the United States will act as the guarantor state for the Israelis. It means that they are elevating themselves to the league of a superpower of the United States, and they are downgrading Israel to the level of Hamas. Okay, so here this is super crucial that you could understand the most important dynamics that are driving the Turkish decision makers. And from my perspective, the most important problematic part here is that, yes, Turkey is marketing its words and actions that it wants to bring peace to the Middle East. But at the same time, the same product that was marketed to us is also saying us that in future, if there will be a violation of such a treaty, the same Turkey will not hesitate to use force against the state of Israel. And that is a very important escalation. And that is a very important indicator for us that shows how Turkish foreign policy vis-a-vis Israel changed significantly, fundamentally.
What you're articulating here is actually very worrying for the Israelis, because you're talking about using force against the state of Israel in some shape or form. But others in Israel also talking about the new Turkish axis and comparing it to actually the Iranian axis. Do you think this is fair, or do you think that's exaggeration?
Unfortunately, I cannot call this as an exaggeration. Maybe
let's ask it this way:
It's very early.
Does Turkey want to destroy Israel? Want to or aims to for the destruction of the state of Israel?
I would like to answer this question in a very clear way. We are now in December 2025, and I'm emphasizing the date, okay? Because unfortunately, the future is not foreseeable. But today's Turkey on paper is not, I'm again highlighting the word not, seeking to destroy the state of Israel like Iran does. But it doesn't mean that the same Turkey is not posing a threat against the state of Israel or not challenging the state of Israel. Once we are talking about a national security threat, it doesn't mean that that particular threat should end with total destruction, right? We can definitely say that Turkey can decrease Israeli influence in Eastern Mediterranean or in Syria or in other places, let's say like in NATO and in Central Asia, in Caucasia, you name it, okay? Because Turkey is integrated in many different circles. So it doesn't mean that Israel will be threatened by Turkey like the same way that Iran threatens Israel, okay? But if you are asking me when I'm comparing the Turkish stance vis-a-vis Israel, when I'm comparing it with the last decade, I mean, if we were talking about Israeli-Turkish relations in 2010, I could answer this question in a very different way, in 2015 in a different way, and now we are in 2025. Unfortunately, I can see here a very concerning trend that we have a steady deterioration in the relations. Yes, we had not genuine artificial normalizations on our ways twice, but both of the normalizations collapsed because of recognition of Donald Trump. Donald Trump's recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital. And the second one was collapsed because of the October the 7th war. In both of the cases, if we are going to look at it, Israel was inactive. In the first case, the decision maker was the American president. And in the second case, Israel was attacked by Hamas. But who paid the ultimate price when we are speaking about the Israeli-Turkish relations? Israel paid the ultimate price. In each case, Turkey downgraded its relations with the State of Israel intentionally. So therefore, I can definitely tell you, because of its geopolitical location, and because of its military strength, and because of its penetration in Syria, in Lebanon, in Somalia, and its presence in Cyprus. Of course, Turkey, unfortunately, is posing a threat against the State of Israel because of its current politics. But it doesn't mean that Israel sees Turkey, as a national security threat because Turkey is located there. No, it's not the case. Israeli government never adopted an intentional policy that threatened the Turkish national security. Even when we are looking at the Kurdish case, Israel did everything possible to distance itself from the PKK, but had friendly relations with the northern Iraqi Kurdistan regional government. Also, the Turks have proper relations with the Kurdistan regional government. Long story short, yes, unfortunately, today Turkey can be considered as a national security threat for Israel, but it's because of Turkey's antagonist policy against the State of Israel and not vice versa. Okay, we should put this on the ground. And today we can say that the Iranian hostility is something else. It's more ideological, more driven by Islamic fanaticism. And Turkey of December 2025, its official stance is not calling for the destruction of the State of Israel. And I hope that it will remain in that way.
All right. Very good. But another concerning factor here is actually the Turkish involvement with this new Syrian government.
Yes.
Some regard the new Syrian government in Israel as a proxy, as a Turkish proxy.
Definitely, I'm one of them.
Yes?
Of
you
course.
think that?
Yeah.
Elaborate more.
Sure. When Bashar al-Assad lost, and he had to leave the country, we all know that last December, this Ahmed al-Shara, he became the new Syrian president, and obviously we cannot ignore his connections with Al-Qaeda and other Islamist jihadist organizations. So even if he has this brand new tie and jacket and shirt, in Israel we have a very bad habit. We do not forget easily the past of the people. And we also know that Ahmed al-Shara's perfect relations with Ankara, the Turkish intelligence agencies had Ibrahim Kalin and also the Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan. They paid visits to Damascus, and they became the first ever foreigners who visited Syria after the Syrian revolution. They call it as revolution. So that's
good to think that's a revolution.
It's a kind of a revolution, but it was a civil war. I don't think that it's a revolution that came from. It's something else.
But it wasn't like Turkish war against the Assad regime or against.
Definitely, Turkey became the champion of the opposition forces in Syria. They provided,
but they weren't the one that ignited it.
We all remember how the things got out of control during the Arab Spring. And it was not a secret that Turkey's administration wanted to see a Sunni driven leadership in Syria, and therefore at first they wanted to persuade Bashar al-Assad. They even sent their then Foreign Minister Ahmed Davutoglu to Damascus, but once they saw that it was impossible to persuade Assad, then they began to arm and they began to host, and they provided logistical assistance for the Syrian opposition. The province of Hatay has turned into a kind of a headquarters for the Syrian opposition. And when we are analyzing what happened in Syria, we can definitely say that if the Russians and the Syrians did not launch a full-scale attack against the Idlib province, where Ahmad al-Shara's or al-Julani's most important stronghold, it was because of the Turkish, intervention. Because Turkey, we all remember that, threatened Europe if Idlib would be bombed would be attacked in a full-scale war. Approximately 4 million new potential refugees could come to Turkey, and in that case, Turkey openly threatened Europe that it will not stop these refugees from crossing to Greece or Bulgaria. And therefore, Turkey also used this leverage, this refugee card, as a very important leverage in order to also take the European support to protect the Idlib province. And obviously, Ahmed al-Shara is not forgetting all of these. And also we cannot forget the approximately 4 million Syrian refugees who took shelter inside Turkey during the civil war. And when we are looking all of this picture, we can definitely say that Turkey has become the most important victor of this Syrian civil war, and now they are deepening their penetration in Syria. And it's not a secret that all of this friction between Syria and Israel, on paper, on daily basis, the Turkish administration is saying that they would like to see a stable Syria, and they are against this friction between Israel and Syria. But on the other hand, I would like to divert your attention that whenever there is a friction between Israel and Syria, we are seeing some new agreements that are, signed by the Turkish Defense Ministry with their Syrian counterparts, meaning that Turkey is taking advantage of these frictions between the new Syrian government and Israel and translating it into its own advantage, like providing new arms, selling new arms to the Syrian army, which turns Syria into an active market for the Turkish defense industry. Moreover, training the Syrian military according to their own, war doctrines, etc. They are deepening their relationship. And once you have an actor like Israel that you can justify your collaboration with the Syrian army easily. So for Turkey, it's unlike their official statements. I believe that the friction between Israel and Syria is serving for Turkish interests.
There's a lot to unpack here, definitely. But I don't want us to leave without talking about some internal or domestic Turkish issues, and definitely the issue of the economy, the birth rate that is dropping in Turkey, and Erdogan's future. If you can summarize this, on one hand, we're saying that the Turkish economy is falling. On the other hand, the strategic influence of Turkey is increasing.
Yes.
And Erdogan, will he stay in power?
Yes, and I assume that he will continue to stay in power. Look, you already mentioned about the demographic rate. The demographic rate for the first time in Turkish history is below 2. It means that when a man and a woman is getting married, more or less, they are only bringing to our world only one child. Okay, this is very important, and this is alarming for Turkey because for the first time, the country's population may decrease in the future. So we ask why. Because we know from a Western perspective, when you are having a child, you would like to bring him all necessary things, right? Like fair education, fair health system. And if you are incapable of providing these services as a parent, you know that, it's impossible to become a parent. It's not like, I have this son or daughter and may God send me some, new sources of money. It's not like that in today's world. And therefore, when we are witnessing the deterioration of the economy in Turkey, especially how we see it, the devaluation of Turkish lira vis-a-vis dollar, it is almost impossible for the Turks. When I'm talking about the Turks, I'm talking about the ordinary Turks. I'm not talking about the rich elite class who were already rich and they still have their own investments or in dollars or in euros and they are not affected from it. No, I'm talking about ordinary Turkish citizens. They are not allowed. They cannot leave the country, for instance, to go to Europe, because then you will have to multiply all of the products by 30, 35, etc. because of the Turkish lira's devaluation vis-a-vis euro and dollar. Okay? So they are bringing to this world less and less children. So this is very much connected. But at the same time, we are not seeing the collapse of the Turkish economy. So we can ask why. Because of the hot money that is coming from Qatar. Okay, so Qatar is pumping lots of hot money into Turkey. They have many different investments. And recently also Turkey is also mending its fences with the European countries. For instance, Germany and UK. The UK Prime Minister and the German Chancellor, they visited Turkey. And they are also signing new deals with the Turkish counterparts. They are very much interested in, having more exports and imports to Turkey. And you wanted to talk about the domestic politics. Now I would like to refer to that.
Maybe in short also.
In short, the mayor of Istanbul, Ekrem İmamoğlu, who is considered as the most important rival of Erdogan, is now in prison because of false charges. He's accused of being a criminal crime leader and also being a spy for the UK. The same week that he was accused for being a spy for the UK, the Prime Minister of Britain came. Yeah, and he said he didn't say anything about this. Could you please tell me?
Needs Turkey.
They need Turkey. They need Turkey. Why? Because of the Russian challenge. Because of the Russian threat. They do not want to add Turkey to Russia as an additional headache in their eastern frontier.
So that's what helps Erdogan's head to stay above the water.
He's very much aware of it. And even if he's talking about the need to end this war in Ukraine and in Russia, let me tell, maybe he really wants to end this war, but he is also enjoying from the consequences of this war for his own domestic politics and for the Turkish foreign policy. He's stronger and stronger.
Yeah, and maybe we'll finish with this, but it's important to ask you, maybe an answer a minute or less. 5 years from now, Israel is normalizing relations with Turkey once again, or actually going the other way around and maybe reaching another level of anonymity between the two?
As a person who was born and raised in Turkey, I love Turkey. I really love Turkey, and my only desire is to see these two states, the state that I was born in and the state that I'm living in, again, come together and to make business and to pose to the cameras together with the Israeli-Turkish flags once again. I believe that in the Israeli academia and the decision makers, if the Turkish side will make one positive gesture, I think it would be also responded in a positive manner. From the Israeli point of view, I see that there is a readiness, even if we are seeing a rapprochement with the Greeks and with the Cypriots, because at the end we know that the Israeli national security is not interested in turning Turkey into another important threat against the state of Israel. But when I'm looking at the statements of the Turkish president, of Turkish foreign minister, defense minister, etc., and even the Turkish opposition, let's imagine that if they will be able to, I don't think, but anyways, unfortunately from the Turkish side, unless something dramatic will happen, which I think that it will not happen, more or less, I think also in the next elections, most likely Erdogan will win, and he will not allow the opposition to win the elections one way or the other. So I really don't think that there will be a real change in the Turkish foreign policy vis-a-vis Israel. So it is something very much concerning, because if this current the current foreign policy will continue in this way, unfortunately, we may see a more serious friction in the future, and this is very much unwanted. So I think both of the decision makers, despite their harsh statements, they have to act responsibly, and they have to lower the tension between the two countries.
Yeah. That's definitely what you're asking for on a personal level.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely
and
regional.
I'm not ashamed of it. I have the right to ask for such a thing, because I was born and raised there, and I'm living there, and I'm living here. And therefore, nobody can be happier than me if these two states will come together and mend their fences.
We all hope for that. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Eytan Cohen, you're a Turkey expert in the Moshe Dayan Center in Tel Aviv University. Thank you so much for all you've given us today.
Thank you.